Hello and welcome to the Scarlet Faithful podcast. I am your host and co-founder, Aaron Breitman. Thanks so much for tuning in once again. Last week had Jerry Carino on to do kind of a full-scale review of the Rutgers men's basketball season, and also obviously talking about the off-season that is in full swing. Really appreciate his time and hope you liked it. Now going to shift gears, doing a mailbag edition once again of the podcast. Appreciate everyone who responded to my tweet. Got some great topics and questions to cover. I'm not going to be able to cover them all. I got a couple late in the game after pretty much had everything developed that I wanted to cover for this episode. So here it goes, and hope you find it fun and informative. Starting with Mike Yard, I feel like all of the transfer rumors for basketball are guard related. A guard transfer is necessary, but do you see Pike going after a big man in the portal? Obviously, Cliff's decision is huge, but do you think he's comfortable going into next year with just Woolfolk and Bainadongo? Great question. Thank you, Mike. So really is very dependent on Cliff. Entered the NBA draft evaluation process, is not signing with an agent, retains his college eligibility, and has until June 12th to make a decision. Early entrants can withdraw by June 12th. So the staff is a little bit in a wait and see here. They're obviously going to hold the staff spot for Cliff, as they should. This is very similar to what they've done in the past and previous years with Geo Baker, Ron Harper Jr., Caleb McConnell. So kind of par for the course. They have experience doing this, and I think that that's a good thing. I know they've had conversations with other big men in the portal. Jameel Reynolds is one from Temple who recently cut down to his final five. And this is a guy this week that, he's a 10-5 guy from Temple, solid player, was a bit inconsistent, needs to get stronger, I think, in my opinion, to be more consistent. But he told 24/7 Sports this week he's looking for 25 to 30 minutes wherever he goes, and as a lot of transfers will do. And Rutgers can't commit to that. So while there might have been mutual interest, I'm not sure. Rutgers isn't going to be in the game for certain guys like that want to make a decision ASAP and want guarantee of essentially a starting role. So Rutgers obviously isn't in that position to do that. But I know that was a guy that they reached out to. You had Josh Cohen from St. Francis, excellent offensive big man, just committed to UMass. That was a guy that they were interested in. And he's going somewhere. He's going to have a major role. So I think that, yes, I do think if Cliff does not return, they will actively seek a big man in the portal. I think it shows they're doing their due diligence already. They're very prepared as a staff in terms of contingency plans and how they handle various, options and things that can happen on the recruiting trail, and obviously reconstructing this roster. So Cliff is a big chip that they need to give him time to figure it out. In terms of Bainadongo, the 4-star freshman coming in, along with Gavin Griffiths and Jermichael Davis, and then obviously Antoine Woolfolk, really high on both of them. I think Wolf obviously showed signs at the end of last season. I thought overall he was better than expected, just in terms of his background. Because I think one thing that's really exciting, they always say freshman into sophomore year is your biggest development period. But, this was his first year he ever truly focused just on basketball. He was primarily a football recruit in high school. And this is the first year he's dedicated fully to basketball. So now that he is only a basketball player, has a year of college under his belt, is going to have a full off season with the coaching staff. Super excited to see what he can become for next season. Huge ceiling for him. Then you have Bainadongo, who I can't be higher on. I think that, he's going to end up being a steal for the staff. He was, just recently promoted to a 4-star by the recruiting services, and, was generally under-recruited, I think, and could be an example of kind of a under the radar steal that is ultimately highly rated for Rutgers, and 6'10" big man, ultra athletic, still developing, but has some real offensive skills right away, which, big men, it always takes a while for them to develop offensively, but really, really high on him. If Cliff doesn't return, will the staff just go in with the two of them next season? I'd say doubtful. I think you need an experienced big, if it's grad transfer. That's a lot of an experience to go into next season with. So we'll see. But I think it shows that they are putting feelers out there with guys in the portal. I think if Cliff does not return, they will find somebody to bring in. I think if Cliff does return, obviously huge, and can talk more about that in a minute. Moving on, Brian Gall. Will Derek Simpson, be the focal point of the offense next season? I think he's going to be a big piece. We saw him at the end of this past season, his development and how key he was to the offense in terms of penetration, creating offense off the dribble. Rutgers was much better offensively when he was attacking, and they desperately need more of that. And I think perfect example this weekend, they're hosting Noah Fernandes. I reported on it earlier this week. The UMass guard, who, if you remember, 2 years ago, made that 3-point dagger to beat Rutgers at the buzzer in Amherst. Very productive guard. Can create off the dribble. Shot a solid clip. He was shooting 42% from three this year. Before he was injured, he had an ankle injury, missed the last 2 months, only played 11 games. But the year before, he shot 36% from three. He led UMass in scoring, 15 points a game. He led them in assists, 5 a game. 2 years ago, that year, 21-22, he was 37th nationally in assist rate. So he's really he's a combo guard. He can distribute the rock, and he can make shots inside and out. So he is the ideal transfer portal target. He's a grad transfer, 1 year remaining. Would be a massive, tremendous signing if they can get him. He's highly sought after. He does have a visit scheduled for the following week at Butler. There's Boston College, I know, is on the prow. Who knows what NIL will be a factor. I'm sure it will be a factor. It is a major factor right now with transfers. Look at Josh Cohen canceling a trip to Iowa to sign with UMass, rumored to have a pretty significant NIL deal there. It's gonna see what happens. I'm sure the staff's gonna try to close him as soon as possible. It's just great that they got him on campus and have that opportunity. So we'll see. But yes, my point in saying that is that Simpson's going to be a big piece, but he's not going to be the only piece. And they can't just have one guard that can create offense. They need multiple guards that can create offense. You're going to have another shooter now in Gavin Griffiths along with Cam Spencer. We'll see what the front court shapes up to be. But for Rutgers to be able to space the front court or half court offense, they need guards that can attack. We saw the NCAA tournament, teams that had guards that could create won games. And that really is a deficiency in the Big Ten, as well as with Rutgers. And Simpson developed towards the end of the season. He was overall for the season inefficient in terms of finishing at the rim. That's something he has to work on. He has got to get stronger. He's got to work on his 3-point shot. But a lot to work with, a lot to like with Simpson. Very high on him. But he can't do it alone. Rutgers can't be a one-show pony. And they need a more experienced guard to pair with him that can also create. Noah Fernandes would be perfect, but we'll see. We'll see. But to answer that question, yes, he's going to be a big part, but not the only part. Let's see here. Dan Cavello, Dan, went to college with Dan at Rutgers. Great guy, great sports, very knowledgeable sports fan. And 2 questions on Rutgers. Is there a plan to have an offensive plan, or just to get players that already have high offensive ability? Note that's not actually a plan. Also, do you feel RU defense is overrated a bit in reputation, 22-23 versus reality? Great questions from Dan. First, the offensive part. I think there's some truth to that, but so yes, Rutgers needs to have better organization and better execution offensively. I will say that if they had just finished better at the rim last season, their offense would have been a lot better. There were plenty of games where they were well below 50% inside and on layups. You can't go 11 of 28 or 5 of 22, on layups, which happened a couple of times. I think everyone on the team has to finish stronger at the rim. That's got to be a point of focus, point of emphasis this offseason. I think, as we said, I think it's both. I really think yes, the coaching, the offensive strategy, the plan needs to be looked at heavily. But you could bring the best offensive coach in the world, and if you don't have players that are skilled, that can get to the rim, that can make shots, the plan's not going to work. And so I think it's both. I think they're adding, as I mentioned, Griffiths as a shooter. I think they need at least one more attacking guard. If they can get another shooter. They need weapons. They need offensive weapons. I think this is the key to the evolution of Pikiell's tenure. I wrote this after the season that the 65 per hour speed limit has to go up. They can't just rely on their defense to win games. They can't. They have to win games giving up more than 65 points. They didn't do that this year against high major competition, and that's what held them back. Tying into your second question, Rutgers finished sixth nationally in defensive efficiency. The top 5 teams made the Sweet 16. Rutgers didn't make the tournament because of their offense. I don't think their defense is overrated. I think their defense was too inconsistent. They had a lot of games at the end of the season where it was not at the level that they can play. A big part of that, of course, was the loss of Mawat Mag. But I don't think that their defense was overrated. They still finished number 1 in Big Ten conference play. They still finished number 6 nationally. It was a drop down. They were 3 at one point. And they had some really good defensive games at the end of the season, but they also had some poor ones as well. So I think the consistency there, I think they wore down as a team. There were some injuries there. So it's and I think that their lack of offense hurt their defense at times too. And I think that really wore on them as the season went on too. But yes, they need to have an offensive identity. They are lacking that. So I do agree with Dan, that they need to figure out a plan, but they need to add talent as well. And I think that tying into Joe Jackson's question, obviously the basketball roster is not close to being complete for next year, but do you see them being able to replicate the defensive efficiency of last year? So tying into that, they have to improve offensively. You're adding Griffiths. I think he's going to need some work defensively, but I think he's going to be a huge factor offensively right away. You're losing Caleb McConnell, who did play injured, by the way, down the stretch. I think it's going to take a while to gel defensively. I think they can still be very good. Finishing top 10 nationally, defensive efficiency, you can't expect that every year. They've now done it twice under Pikiell. So statistically, I think they'll probably take a step back defensively, but if they could take a step or two forward offensively, that will be, that will still be a net positive. So tying into Joe's second question, any idea if Paul Mulcahy will return? No idea. I think it's a very interesting situation. He obviously bought himself some time by, entering the NBA draft evaluation process. Plenty of people online saying, oh, what is he doing? Listen, it's not just about declaring for the draft. When you put your name out there, when you're going to go through the evaluation process, your name is out there for all the pro leagues, and he's going to have, critical evaluations written about him by the NBA that can help him, not only if he wants to come back to Rutgers and develop as a player, but also as selling points for other pro leagues. He may want to go overseas. We don't know what's in his head. He may want to walk away. We don't know. Do I think he can return? Yes. I mean, and also let me just quickly address people that saying, it's time for him to move on. I disagree. He's going to have to play a different role. Say they get attacking guard like Fernandez and Simpson, Paul's not going to be the primary ball handler anymore. But, I think they could be creative in how they use him. He's an excellent passer. He's got size. We've seen him, when he's spotted up in the paint as a distributor, especially against the zone. He has the ability to hit the three. He shot relatively high this year, 37%, I believe. He did 39% 2 years ago. He just has to get the confidence back in his game. He's got to get healthy. I think he was, playing through injuries most of the season, particularly at the end after starting the season, with the shoulder injury. So there's a lot of factors that went into what happened. Yes, he did not play his best at the end of the year, but that's no reason to write him off. That's no reason to not want him back. And I think, his he could add a different element to the Rutgers offense. I really do think so. And, we'll see. But again, it's going to take time to figure that out. LJS, in view of the type of recruits now being sought after by Rutgers, will the offense take a more upbeat run and gun approach in future seasons? I do think that, despite being kind of a slower tempo team of late, really the Pikel era, they've also been very good in transition. And I thought, the loss of Mag really hurt them in transition. But yes, I think that as Rutgers gets more athletic, as they get more offensive minded, I do think they will look to run more. I wouldn't call it a run and gun. They're not going to be like UNLV of old, which I'll mention later, or the Showtime Lakers. I'm dating myself with both references, but yes, I do think they're going to look to run more. I think they'll look to press more too as they get deeper, as they get more athletic, as they get more talent. When you have guys like Delquan Warren coming, obviously I wrote about Dylan Harper this week and the priority that he is. You're going to have catch and shoot guys like Gavin Griffiths who can run up and down the floor. I think Bain Ndongo is going to be really athletic and be able to run the floor. We've seen Wolf run the floor. We've seen Mag run the floor. They're going to get more athletic, and they're going to get, yes, I do think they're going to look to run more in transition long term. R.U. Zoolander, longtime reader and supporter of me, which I always appreciate. Which returning hoops player will make the biggest jump next year, Simpson, Wolf, or Chol? So just from that perspective, I would say, Chol didn't have any impact this year. They're really, bringing him along with his development, and they're really high on him. He's a 6'8" wing. He can, score in multiple ways. He's a good shooter. I think, he definitely has a chance to break into the rotation next year. And I think just from pure impact of not having one this year, he can make the biggest leap. But in terms of overall and long-term development, I think between Simpson, Wolf, and Chol, I think I have to go Wolf. I mean, he's got some natural ability that I didn't see coming. And just in terms of his footwork, he's got a really good kind of feel for the game. His positioning on defense, the Rutgers defense is really hard to grasp and to adjust to. And he picked it up relatively quick. He did struggle, in the middle of the year against Big Ten bigs, as to be expected, but I thought he got better as the year went on. And then offensively, he really flashed some talent at the end of the season. And I'm really excited, like I said earlier, him focusing on basketball full-time, really excited to see what he can do. I do think Simpson's got a huge ceiling as well. Can he develop that outside shot? Can he become a more complete player? I think he can, but we'll have to see. But I think all three players have bright futures and can all be big contributors for Rutgers in the future. Just want to make sure I didn't skip any hoops talk before I move on to other topics. Let's see. I did get from the Core Club, the Rutgers Booster Club. You've been a Rutgers basketball fan for ages. What are some of the under radar great moments you've seen? Love this question, and did put together a few. First off, when I was a teenager, Rutgers hosted UNLV, going back to the Running Rebels, Jerry Tartanian days. This was the November directly after UNLV lost in the Final Four to Duke and had won the national title the year before. That entire starting five was gone with Larry Johnson, Stacey Augmon, Anderson Hunt, and Greg Anthony, and George Ackles. He was the fifth, I believe. The Amoeba defense. Love that team as a basketball fan. And so this team was on probation, could not go to the NCAA tournament. They went 28-2. And one of their losses was at the rack to Rutgers. I was at that game. It was a wild game. I can't tell you anything specific about the game other than it was extremely high scoring. It was a very entertaining game, and Rutgers ultimately won. And the rack was rocking, and it ended up being a tremendous win. Now that team, unfortunately for Rutgers, didn't make the NCAA tournament. We had hopes that they would. That was the 91-92 team. Following, an NCAA tournament appearance 2 of the previous 3 years. But still a very good team for Rutgers. And that was a huge win and an awesome moment at the rack for me personally. Then I go to My senior year of college, the Troy Murphy game, as I like to call it, Rutgers hosted Notre Dame, beat them by 25 points. Troy Murphy, for those that don't know, and I'm dating myself again, was played at Del Barton, was from Sparta, New Jersey, two-time Big East Player of the Year, two-time first-team All-American, 12-year NBA player, very good, he's kind of a stretch four, and dominant college player. And when he came to that game at the RAC, I was in the student section. We all had newspapers during his introduction, kind of an old school, Cameron Indoor Arena move. And the place was amped. I mean, he got booed every time he touched the ball, and it was awesome. And Rutgers clocked him. And it was a great environment to be at. And, definitely a great memory for me as a student in the student section. And then, I want to touch on Pikel's first season. I was at that buzzer beater against Hartford. The CJ Getty's putback, that was the day after Thanksgiving, Pikel's first season. So first month on the job, they improved to 6-0. And that was for me like a moment where, the RAC, it was only half full, if that, but the place was rocking and it was just genuine excitement. We were so thirsty for anything to be positive about the program. And that was a moment for sure. And then at the end of that season, they went 3-15 in Big Ten play, but they won the regular season finale at home against Illinois by 3 points, and then went to DC and beat Ohio State, the first 14 seed to ever win a Big Ten tournament game. I was at both of those games. And that, again, it just reinforced that things were trending in the right direction. Even though year one under Steve Pikel, you felt like things were generally happening. And those were all underrated moments for me. So I hope you like that. All right, moving on now to some other questions. Mike Cavente, and I guess this is kind of football, basketball related, NIL related. Do you know if any former players who made it to the pros or have donated any push to get them to make major contributions? What about any other rich alumni? Can't rely only on the Towers, as generous as they've been. The support needs to be repeated, not only one time. First off, Mike is right. I mean, Jeff and Amy Towers have been amazing to Rutgers. The financial investment, just their support publicly. Amy's on the board of governors. They just do. Jeff has, been involved in a lot of different things. He's involved with Knights of the Raritan as well. Both of them have just been amazing to Rutgers and not Rutgers alumni, by the way. Where would Rutgers be without the two of them? I don't know, but thank you for all you do for Rutgers. And yes, Mike's right. I mean, and by the way, Knights of the Raritan does a great job. John Newman and the entire group. And, we have the Knight Society. I mean, Rutgers has, a pretty solid NIL base. Knights of the Raritan committed to paying all NIL deals for all the football, women's and men's basketball players in 2023. But yes, more is needed. The big money deals for the top players, is happening at other schools. And Rutgers needs more support for sure. It doesn't. And I will say this. I do think that there's some big donors out there for Rutgers. And I think that some things are happening behind the scenes outside of working with the collective. And that is a positive. I won't go too far into that, but I do think that there are some NIL things happening behind the scenes. But at the same time, yes, I agree that more NIL support is needed. This really is an institutional problem to me. Rutgers has always had problems with donations, fundraising across the board as a university, and it just trickles down to athletics as well. So, we don't need to make this a debate about is NIL right or wrong for those that disagree with it. Obviously, I think it's a great thing. It's a huge factor right now in college hoops with the portal in terms of transfer recruiting. And that's why you're seeing some very good players on very good teams jumping in the portal because they're looking to see what they're worth. It's a numbers game, right? You could be a great college player and not make the NBA. You could be a great college player and not even have a great pro career overseas. So this is now an opportunity for those players to take advantage and capitalize. Not fair or they shouldn't be is ridiculous in my opinion. But again, I don't want to get into that debate. I just want to say that, yes, Rutgers needs as much NIL support as they can get to remain competitive. I do think there is more support out there than is publicly known, but yes, they need more. Let's see. Let's move to football. John Guccione, any thoughts on the offensive line? Will they add any from the portal? So Rutgers football now in their second week of spring practice. Yes, offensive line, major concern. Offense, major concern. Haven't added any offensive players from the portal this offseason. Major concern. Obviously, hiring the staff, in January, did impact that. I do think that Kirk Soraka was a great hire. I do think that, having Dave Brock as wide receivers coach is a really big positive. And Flaherty as the offensive line coach, I think, is really good too. So I think the coaching is top notch. But again, my point to basketball, you need players. You need players. As great as any coach is, you need players to execute what you're teaching. And Rutgers needs help. They need help on the offensive line. They need help at wide receiver. They need help everywhere. Listen, hopefully Gavin Wimsatt really develops under Soraka. But just from a depth perspective, I'm worried. You have him and Simon, and then you have a Johnny Shepard, true freshman, who could end up being really good. They like him. He's got, very talented. But, I just think back to the Iowa game last year in the middle of the season when, Wimsatt and Vedral were hurt, and you only had Evan Simon as a scholarship quarterback. And so it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see when spring practice is over, when the portal season kind of opens a second time for college football. I think you're going to see Rutgers attack it. I think they have to. They have to bring in players for the offensive side of the ball. I really don't know who's developed yet with the offensive line. The offensive line coach Flaherty hasn't spoken yet to the media, so we don't know what's going on there. They've really been mum on the offensive line. But yes, I'm concerned about it just because the offensive line is so critical, the offensive line success. And I'm concerned about the wide receivers. Who's the quarterback's going to throw to? So, I wrote about Rashad Rochelle. I think Nassim Brantley has potential as a FCS transfer. But overall, yeah, the offense needs a lot of help, a lot of work, a lot of development. I think the coaching staff is really strong now offensively, but it's going to be a major work in progress and probably going to determine how far Rutgers goes this season on the gridiron. Moving on. Just want to make sure let's see here. Sorry for the delay. Friday Night Lights. What is the status of division realignment for the Big Ten? Will that be announced for 2024? And what do you see the new configuration looking like? So it's been reported that divisions will go away after this coming season for football. They're going to wait another year. UCLA and USC join in 2024. And, it could be, I think there's also been a report that each team was requested to send in their preferred 3-game kind of pod or just annual rivals, so to speak, that they'll play on a regular basis. Obviously for Rutgers, if that ends up being how they schedule, I think, Penn State and Maryland make a lot of sense. I'd say, I'd even throw Indiana in there for the 3. We'll see how they, balance it out. Obviously, being in the East has been a big issue for Rutgers. I think it is going to go away. But they could, I guess, go to 4-team pods, 4-team divisions, so to speak. You play those 3 teams, then you play 2 from the other 3 divisions. I've seen that idea out there. It's going to be interesting. Or they just keep it as one league, 16 teams. You have 3 kind of set rivals that you play, and then it's a random 6, aside from that. So it will be fascinating to see, but it's also going to depend on who the Big Ten commissioner is. And that hasn't really been talked about much at all. Kevin Warren's on his way out. We don't know who's coming in. It hasn't been said. So whoever that is going to have a big influence, obviously, on what happens in the future. Okay, a couple more here to go. Neil Baker, longtime supporter of me and tweet with him quite a bit. Thanks, Neil, for the question. Following up on a question I posed approximately 1 month ago, any word on who may be joining the women's hoops team? So fair question. I will tell you that it's been extremely quiet. I will also say I'm not particularly tapped in with women's basketball recruiting. Obviously, they have not announced anyone, so they haven't signed anyone for next season. So, yeah, I would say that's a concern. It is early in the portal season, though, and there's going to be a lot of available players. Jillian Hoyter, Kevin Hoyter's sister, great NBA player, great NBA shooter. She joined the program mid-year. and will be a part of the team, obviously moving forward. Kayleen Schmeichel, tremendous freshman, first team All Big Ten freshman. Great piece to have. Antonia Bates got a lot of experience as a freshman as well. She's back. And then you also have two returners in China Cornwell. Oh boy, I'm blanking on the second player, and I'm really apologize. I'll have to come back to it, and I will find it. But there's a decent core returning, but not a lot of depth, even less depth than last year, which is not good. And obviously, just eight. I thought head coach Coquise Washington did a fantastic job last year in terms of getting what she did out of this team, finishing 11th in the Big Ten. And getting 5 conference wins. I thought that was an amazing job by her. It's Erica Lafayette. That's who's back along with Cornwell, 2 original players. And then you have Bates and Schmeichel and then Hoyter. So I'm sure they're being aggressive in the portal. I'm sure they're, in terms of 2023, not so sure they're going to get. There was a pair of sisters, 4-star recruits in Michigan, the Davis sisters, India and Summer Davis, who committed to Michigan State and recently decommitted when they just had a coaching change. So it'll be interesting to see if they can get any traction there. But that's, they're also 2024. So you need to build towards next year. You need to build the year after that. Just because it's been quiet, I would not say it's time to panic. I think Coquise Washington has proven to be very strategic, very prepared, and also just very deliberate. And she's not just bringing anyone to fill a scholarship role into the program. I like that approach. I know that can be a little nerve-wracking. They need pure numbers as well as improved talent. But overall, I would say that to wait and see, and I will definitely cover women's basketball recruiting, as they announce commitments, but also, I'll follow up in another podcast episode as well. Coach Sipe, appreciate all his interaction as well. We were told that our golf team can't play big conference foes at home due to the lack of length of the course. How much longer does the course need to be, and is it feasible to make those changes in the confines of where the course is located? I did do a little digging on this. I haven't gotten a full response, but my answer is, I don't think that it's feasible to make the course any longer. It is kind of really tight in the Bush campus. Even close to some, academic buildings and roads, and I don't see how they make it bigger. 6 of the Big Ten schools have championship courses. I haven't been able to figure out what the length and the differences are. One thing I did read up on, though, is that a lot of the Big Ten programs, even those that have pretty much every Big Ten team has, except one, has their own course. But a lot of them play at local courses all over, to different places. It's good for the team's kind of development to get used to different courses, but also there's a lot of hospitality and encouragement from local courses, in different Big Ten areas that want the golf team to play there. So, I don't know how much Rutgers does that. I want to find out more. This actually, I like the question and makes me want to dig more into this and find out more. And the golf program has made strides. Been impressed with them, and we'll circle back on this, but I don't think they're going to be, able to lengthen the Rutgers course right now. So I kind of blew through a lot there. I hope I answered as many questions as I could. There are a couple I'll readdress that came in later. But overall, I'd say, hoops, I'm encouraged. Obviously, how they fill out the roster for next season it remains to be seen, and will be very interesting to follow this offseason. I'll be all over it. And then football, spring practice. We'll see the spring game soon. And really excited to see what they do in the portal, because I think they need to bring in help, like I said. But really appreciate everyone who took time to send in questions. Thank you for listening to this episode. Have a couple things coming with Scarlet Faithful soon. I'm going to be adding a new feature I'll announce for the first time right now. We're going to have a new forum feature. I'd say similar to the message boards, but a little different. But where people can kind of interact and within the community, try to build the community for the Scarlet Faithful and for Rutgers fans there. And I'll have an announcement soon on that. going to do a kind of a giveaway as well to promote that. So hope you check that out when it's live, and just really appreciate everyone's support in terms of reading the Scarlet Faithful, listening to these podcasts, watching my videos on YouTube, and hope everybody has a fantastic holiday weekend, and I'll be back soon.